Welcome everyone to Entrepreneur Stories. Welcome, Carla.
Hi.
So good to have you here. We've got a lot of new faces today, so just so everyone knows, this is a live podcast. We want you to embrace that. Don't feel like you have to sit there quietly. It's all good. It's a live podcast, but if you do have any questions, and you can save them to the end, Wilson's got a mic to pass around, so at least we can get your questions and your answers on the recording, which is always good because some of the best questions we get are actually the ones at the end from the audience. So we'll jump straight in. You were in your mid-20s.
Oh, straight in.
Straight in. Hong Kong in the middle of all the COVID restrictions. You have no tech background, and you decide in 2020 to launch an app business. You left your full paid job. What were you thinking?
I don't know. I look back and yeah. I mean, in hindsight, it's obviously turned out okay.
Yeah.
But I think in the moment, I really thought, like everyone did, that COVID was super temporary. And, I'm super young and I feel like I just finished uni. I think I was a year into a full-time job. I had about 3 years of experience under my belt. And I honestly was super naive in thinking, worst case, I'll just go back to my old job. I never got fired, so I thought hopefully they'll rehire me if everything goes badly. The tech thing was sort of in my brain. It was just a small barrier. People learn skills all the time, right? Like people learn skills. They learn how to pay their taxes. They learn how to go to the doctor and stuff. I feel like I could totally learn how to write an app, and definitely couldn't. I started Googling and realized it was way more complicated than I thought. And most of the Google pages said you should probably start finding an agency. And so I started there. Yeah.
You used the word naive, which is what I kind of wrote down here just to ask you, honestly, do you think a little naivety was necessary for you to do that, looking back?
Yeah, I think it wouldn't have happened without being naive.
Yeah.
I think it was sort of a key thing in how it started. It was, you're always going to get people who say like, you shouldn't be doing this, or, wait till you're older, or wait till you have more money in the bank, or wait till you have a full-time job that you actually have experience in tech or experience in F&B and all these things. And I just thought, like, I feel like I've been waiting for so long. Like, where's the sign where I'm supposed to stop and then start? Like, I don't feel like I've ever heard a story where someone said there was a sign and then I did it.
Yeah.
So I thought, if not now, when? And you have to be a bit naive to do that, I think.
But it's one of those things, right? Because I think that if you had asked anyone with experience, they'd have probably told you not to.
For sure. Yeah.
So, and I think a lot of young founders, when they look back, if you ask them what they were told at the time, they would probably tell you, everyone told me not to do it.
Yeah. It was a weird case here because I had mostly grown up between Switzerland and Hong Kong. My dad is Italian who immigrated to Switzerland, and my mom was from Hong Kong. And I felt like, because I was so pulled around in different countries, I didn't feel like I had an actual mentor or anyone who was a big role model in my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, I thought, like, there's no one I can ask. And there was LinkedIn where you could DM people. The only two female founders I knew in Hong Kong at the time was Anushka from Breer and Olivia from Luna.
Okay.
Neither of them felt like, I didn't feel like they were very approachable. No offense, we're good friends now. It wasn't any offense to them. It was mostly like, I felt like they were so developed in their career that I felt like I was such a small potato versus they had already established their startups. They had already been doing panels and stuff. And I thought, I'm nowhere near there. Like, I haven't even thought of a name to whatever I'm thinking of. And in my mind, I thought, no one's going to tell me that it's not worth doing because I don't know anyone. So I felt like even if I ask somebody, they're going to say it's a bad idea, but I also don't know anyone to ask. I asked my parents. They said, why not? Like, if you feel like you have enough money in the bank account that you could survive for a couple of months, why not try? Little did I know that an app doesn't take a couple months to build, so I had to think of plan B. But I ended up freelancing for a while, for about a year. But, I think there was no one to ask, so I never got a rejection.
It's a great story. You mentioned being half Swiss and half from Hong Kong and Italian father. Before Chomp, your journey through childhood, and I read about various schools in various countries, into university, adulthood, your first jobs. I think it probably gave you some of the tools that you rely on, and have utilized and probably continue to utilize today to drive your business. What did those early years look like, and what do you think you took from them?
It's not a childhood I recommend to anybody. Essentially, I moved 8 countries growing up, 14 cities. My dad was an expat, so I had to move all the time. It was every 2 to 3 years we had to move countries. It was the kind of childhood that I loved growing up, but my younger sibling absolutely hated and affected in a really terrible way. Just found it really difficult to connect with people, found it really difficult to feel like they were secure in one place, whereas I thought it was so great meeting all these people, and I thought it was super fun listening to all these different cultures and like learning about different barriers and different languages. Like I really loved that, and I almost felt like there was no limit to what you could do because all these different people had done so many different types of jobs, so many different lifestyles, that I thought, oh, you could do like anything. Like no one, like who's to say that you should only do XYZ career?
Yeah.
So I feel like it helped sort of grow. At the same time, it also made me realize how bad the F&B industry was, right? So in all these different places, both my parents were in F&B, but they did completely different things. And I realized like how similar it was in every country. And it was something that was so consistent in my life that I thought I would go there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's interesting because I've always thought that I've been blessed to grow up in a city like Hong Kong and travel so much because it's such an international place.
Yeah.
And I think it teaches you things like cultural awareness, adaptability, social skills. And then I'm sure that like all these myriad of influences moving around the world also probably taught you how to deal with a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
Because I heard you say on another podcast that you were literally sometimes packing your bags and moving, and sometimes you were staying there for 2 years and you didn't know how long you'd be in that country. That's got to teach you something about, just adaptability and resilience and just getting through stuff.
Yeah. Well researched. It was like one podcast.
I told you I researched you this weekend.
So the way it worked with my dad was he worked for a really big MNC, and I won't say the name because we're trying to protest against it in sustainability. And he basically back in early or sort of late 90s, early 2000s, the way that it worked as an expat package in Europe was you would basically be contracted to go back to your home base, which happened to be Switzerland. And then you would get given on a piece of paper your next country. You would also be given the date that you had to move to that country. So it would be the week after, it could be in 3 months, it could be in a year, like you wouldn't know. And my dad had a difficult job of picking all of us up, pulling us out of school, and then going to the next place. So we got moved to Moscow one year, but we only got a 1 week notice. So we got pulled out of the school in Switzerland, dropped into Moscow, signed up. They were great because they knew they were doing this so quickly. They basically organized everything. They organized flights so that we could get there safely and on time. They organized schools and stuff. So it was quite seamless, but it was a bit sort of, we don't know what's going to happen in the next couple of months, and this is it. Yeah.
It's like being a diplomat almost,
I feel like we don't get the same benefits. We don't get the nice car with the seating place. Yeah.
You can't park anywhere. So, Carla, where did the idea from Chomp come from, and what is Chomp exactly for people who are listening and may not know?
Yeah. So Chomp essentially is a marketplace app. So I should mention here that it's no tech that's been created new out of an already existing market. It's basically a tech that's has existed for many years, right? Marketplace apps have existed on Facebook. It's existed as carousel, and many different formats. So we use the same technology that they use, which isn't very complicated, and we apply it to something like food waste. So Chomp is a marketplace app where you can save leftover food from going to waste. We work with over 300 different restaurants across Hong Kong, including bars, hotels, cafes, and most recently homeware. So things like flowers. If you've forgotten someone's birthday, then you can definitely buy flowers that have wilted.
I'm going to make a note of that.
I was getting little eyes. So small damages in flower petals, things like that. Everything's at least 50% off, and it's a fully sustainable app, which means that you need to go and pick it up. There's no delivery at all. One order on the app saves about 1 kilo of food from going to waste. So you're doing a really good deed by buying it on Chomp. Now, the idea came probably around uni when I was studying hospitality. Like I said, both my parents were in F&B, and I thought, this was a natural path. It was something that was so consistent throughout my life. And so I studied hospitality. I really loved the degree, and I spent most of my time focusing on part-time jobs and internships because it made the most amount of cash. And at uni, you need every dollar you can get. And so I picked up every job that was around. It was things like banqueting. It was things like wedding receptions or waitressing or bartending or being a barista. And I think I must have worked something like 20 different jobs over the course of 4 years. And of those jobs, every job I had as this low-paying person was to throw out the trash. And the trash always consisted of leftover food, right? Especially in banquets, especially in wedding receptions, things like that. And, I thought, this is so crazy. There's like kilos and kilos of food. I didn't think much of it. I realized that it was something that was in the back of my head. When I went back to school, there were things like marketing classes, finance and real estate classes, so entrepreneurship classes, things like that, to sort of build you into a better a ready person when you graduate. And one of the classes we had was something called food and beverage cost control. It teaches you how to calculate things for a restaurant, a cafe, anything that serves food. And I remember so clearly one day my teacher was saying, you need a budget for food loss. So you need a budget something like 10 to 20,000, depending on the size of the restaurant. It was something like 20% would be lost, right? So this would be a red line. And he marks it on the board in red and he goes, you need a budget for 20% food loss. I was like, we haven't even opened this fake restaurant yet. And we're already calculating a loss. And he was like, okay, you need to split up into, case study groups. And we're going to start building this cafe, restaurant, hotel, whatever you want. Don't forget a budget for 10 to 20% loss. We're like, haven't even opened the door. We're already budgeting for losses. This is so crazy. And then I thought back to all those jobs that I had. And I said, oh my God, it applies to sort of everything. I graduated. I moved to Hong Kong. I picked up a marketing job here. I loved it. I worked full time for about a year. And part of the marketing job that I had was basically organizing events for influencers. It would be things like promoting alcohol brands, promoting, we worked with LVMH, we worked with Glenmorangie. So we had to provide these dinners and, buffets, influencer things. And at the end, we had to clean up. And again, there was food waste. And I thought, oh, this is so crazy. We're in a totally different part of the world and we have the same problem. And then the more research I did, the more I realized that Hong Kong has an even worse problem than Switzerland. Yet somehow the two places have not figured out. They figured out a few things, right? There were things like smart rubbish bins. There were things like taxation on bins and stuff. But I was like, this is crazy.
I don't know if it's the food waste fairy or the food waste devil was constantly
remember?
I'm also fascinated that you had all of these different jobs because you were obviously sort of hustling to make money and get by. And I think all of those influences probably helped you a lot when you set up Chomp in terms of just jumping from one job to another, meeting different people, seeing different industries, all with food waste.
Yeah.
Somehow. But it's interesting. What was the, as it relates to Hong Kong, so we talked about food waste, and you're obviously trying to solve the food waste problem. But what is the problem in Hong Kong specifically that you're trying to solve? And what are the metrics around that?
Oh, it's so bad. I really was not hoping it was going to be a sad podcast, but here we are. So Hong Kong's food waste problem, I don't know if anyone works somewhat in the industry and knows. We waste about 3,600 tons of food a day. If you think about it, it's about something like 22 double-decker buses. Now, in the last 2 years, it's dropped to only 21 double-decker buses in the last 2 years. which doesn't sound like much because it's not. We waste something like 13 million bowls of rice a day. Supermarket wastes about 29,000 kilos, in case you don't know tons, a day. So supermarket, you can think of the really big chains. You can also think of the small wet markets. They count in that number as well. So it's quite a grave problem. One of the worst statistics we've heard is that Hong Kong tried to make what's it called? These landfills, right? These landfills. And I think they made something like 16 landfills to date. So there's only 3 major landfills, and this includes everything like textile waste, furniture, and whatnot. And of those 16 landfills, 14 are completely filled. So there's only 2 left. It's predicted by 2030 that we should fill that landfill, but the new number is that 2026 it should be filled, which is next year. There's been rumors about building Garbage Island out in DB. I don't know how true those rumors are, but
I don't know if the DB residents will like that
enjoy
idea,
that
but
smell.
yeah. And I don't want to be negative because I think you guys are making a huge impact, and we'll come to that. We'll definitely come to that. But in terms of sort of leading up to that, maybe talk us through going from the idea to actually launching the app. And then I was kind of thinking this through in my head and picturing the process you had to go through, because you had to launch the app, you had to recruit the F&B partners, but you also had to recruit the users. It almost feels like a bit of a chicken and egg situation. Maybe you could talk us through that.
I don't recommend building a business that's based on a chicken and egg situation. It was a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. The idea for Chomp was, I really liked my full-time job. I was doing marketing strategy. I really enjoyed it. And I really thought I was going to build Chomp for a couple of months, launch it, let it run on its own, and then I'd go back to my marketing job, and just have it, one of those girls who do,
side hustle.
Yeah, side hustle, and then let it go and make loads of money, and then it would feed my weekends and whatever.
Yeah. When
totally,
it's big enough,
you
go
then I'll
back
just sell it.
No, sell it. Yeah.
It definitely did not happen. I realized how much work it took. And most of it was because it was a chicken and egg problem. So of course, like any marketplace, you need a buyer and a seller. A buyer for us would be the F&B vendors, and then the seller would be like any of you guys, right? The problem is that we felt like when we launched, right, there was all this talk about pre-marketing, make sure that you have a great pre-marketing strategy before you launch something, get the hype up. Make it go viral, like have a waiting list, or like do pop-ups so that they know what they're getting, like all these things. And so we did as much as we could at the time, right? We were only 2 people, me and my co-founder at the time. And so we were like, okay, we'll just get a waiting list going and then go from there. We did a couple of marketing posts and made a couple of ads, and we were like, great, we had 200 people at a wait list. That sounds like plenty of people. It was not. Like 200 people was like the size of a crowd. It was not enough people. But at the time, we're like, okay, we have 200 people and we have 20 restaurants who have signed up for it. So when we launch, we'll have the 20 restaurants start posting, and then we'll have the 200 people ready to start buying. And it should go super smoothly. Of course, it does not, because you can't control 200 people and their purchasing power. And you also can't control 20 restaurants and them posting at the same time. So what we realized within the first sort of week was that half the restaurants had forgotten about us, and the 200 people needed constant reminder. And at the time, we didn't know that app notifications were possible. This is how little tech I knew, and, started realizing, oh my God, we got to start tweaking. We took the app down. We were like, oh my God, we got to start over. And then it took us about 1 or 2 months to actually get it revamped and then going again. So with the chicken and egg problem, the notifications really helped. Constant reminders, like a push in marketing, having really great names, really brought in their own customers who were interested in a smaller deal. Having things like referral codes or like referral discounts, post a picture and you get a referral, a discount for your next order. And then they came back. So there was movement, right? And then this was about 2-3 years in where we actually saw sort of a smooth rotation, right? But then you have things like weathers, where like it's really weather dependent because it's pickup only, right? So then it dropped again. We're like, oh, now we got to start over this circle where we got to get new restaurants and new customers. Luckily, we had like a really loyal following. So when the new restaurants came on, they went immediately to the new restaurant, which sort of brought in the new customers, and then it came over again. And then we had these restaurants who had heard of us from their customers. So it started going again, but it took longer than I thought it would.
There's so much in there that resonates. And I think that new businesses can learn from. And we see it all the time. You meet someone, you think you have a commitment, you think you have their buy-in, their enthusiasm, their support.
Yeah.
And like you said, they forget about you.
Yeah.
Because they go back to doing what they were doing
for sure
the day before they met you or the hour before they met you. And they get busy again. And then you become you go to the bottom of the priority list.
Yeah.
And you've got to then go back. Yeah. And you've got to go back and work it again and get yourself up that priority list. And I think it's something that there's so many good ideas out there, and there's so many. I sometimes feel really bad because people pitch us as well.
Oh.
And I'm like, this is a really good idea.
Yeah.
And I've kind of try now to be quite honest and say we just don't have the time for it right now because we honestly don't.
Yeah.
And we're juggling probably 10 other ideas that are our priority at the moment.
Yeah.
And I think people miss that.
I'd rather get that as feedback. I'd rather be like, can we check back in August?
Yeah.
Like I would so much rather that than if you go, and do a false commitment.
Yeah.
And be like, let's totally go for this. And then just like nothing happens, or it happens really poorly because they weren't able to commit as much as they thought they could.
Yeah.
Like I'd rather you just come back saying, let's try in December or let's try next year. Like that's totally fine.
Yeah.
And be more honest. Not you. I mean, people. I'm looking at you like it's you.
No, we've made that mistake, and you learn from it because you want to be nice.
Of course.
Everyone does, right? No one wants to be the asshole who says, no, I'm not interested, go away, right? You just don't. So you had the idea, you go and I assume you spoke to several app developers, got the app developed.
Yeah. That was the easy part.
That was the easy part. Okay, found 200 people who you thought could help support you as customers. I'm guessing that one of the more difficult part was finding F&B partners to support you early on.
Yeah.
What did that look like?
That was so horrifying. Like just you bringing that up, I'm having this image of me and like hoping I could just burn it. Like I'm so not someone who can do cold calls or like the key thing here with F&B, and I'm sure you know this, is if you're starting out, it's of course the best way is to do referrals, right? But like I said before, we didn't have mentors. We didn't have someone who was in the business and could help us. So we knew cold calls and cold door knocking. And if you've ever done cold door knocking, it is the most humiliating thing that you could ever do. It is worse than speaking like in front of a crowd. It is just you and this one other person, and you're just trying to get a moment of their time. You've just walked into this restaurant. You definitely can't afford to buy anything at this restaurant because you've just done it with 20 other restaurants. And you go in and you're like, hi, can I speak to a manager? And they think you're about to complain about something. And you're like, no, I just want to see if we could, collaborate on something. And they're like, yeah, sure. And you sit down. That's if a good meeting happens. You go and you sit down somewhere. And then they'll say, what are you selling? Like, what do you want? And then you have to make this pitch. Now, I will mention here, at the time that I made this pitch, the app had not been developed. I had a PDF on an iPad of a PowerPoint where I said, this is what the app will be. Not sure when it's launching because we can't figure out a launch date because the app team keeps going back and forth. And, I keep changing my mind on the branding. So it's just going everywhere. And they're asking me to pay extra for this and I can't do it. So we don't know when the date is, but it's going to look like this. And then we're like sliding through this PDF and we're like, this is what we want to do. We want you to sell your leftovers because you might have a leftover problem. And they're like, leftover problem? And you're like, food waste or food loss or food surplus, whatever's left over. And they're like, we don't have anything left over. And you're like, oh, no, we just sat down.
My professor told me it was 20%.
But, 5 years ago, I had this class. And you're like, this is so humiliating. Like, I've built this whole business idea on this one sentence. And then you're like, I just want to go home. This is a horrible idea. And then you just have to commit because you're there and you've just sat down and it's going to be so weird if you leave. So you're like, like whatever's left over, it could be anything. It could be like rice. And they're like, oh, we have rice left over. And you're like, yes, that's it. Like, that's the leftover. Like, can you sell it? And they're like, we just give it to the staff. And you're like, no. And then you like, can we talk to the staff? Like, we want to see if they like, like, are they happy with this? And then we have this another horrible conversation where we're talking to the staff and they're like, we're sick of this meat and rice. We want to get rid of it. We can't eat this. And this is the first time the manager's hearing about it. They end up in this spat and you're like, oh my God, what am I doing here? And then finally they go, we'll come back to you. Let me discuss with the team. We'll come back to you. On a good day, they'll actually come back to you and they'll say, okay, we've just realized that actually the staff are tired of having the leftovers. We're realizing it's a loss. All right, let's try and sell it. And you're like, great, thank God. Like, that was humiliating. I don't want to go back there again. On a bad day, the meetings are so horrific. You go in and you're like, I'm trying to sell you this thing. Here's the iPad again. And can I talk to you? And you pitch this whole thing. And then sometimes they'll go, oh, great idea, but I'm not the right person. And you're like, of course you're not. Like,
let me speak to my boss.
Can I speak to your manager? And you're like, I'm the manager. I'm like, can I speak to the other manager? And so you're there just pitching again and again. I think I must have gone through 50 pitches in a day over a course of 3 months where I'm just like, this is so horrifying. And I just went from district to district, just trying to get somebody on board. We ended up with 20. And that's when I went, that's it. I can't do anymore. Like 20 is fine. We'll just launch with 20. And, all these articles are saying, you got to launch with 100, you got to launch with 50. And I was like, 20 is fine. We'll go with 20. But no, it was horrible. The first person I hired was a salesperson because I just couldn't do it anymore.
Wait, look, in 4 years, you've gone from that to over 250 vendors. And I think it's the stories like the one you just told that people need to hear sometimes.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't start any other way.
No. And I don't think there's enough, like, I haven't heard enough stories where it's like, it was so horrible at the beginning.
Yeah.
And like, it's always like, it was great. We went viral overnight and like, here's the business.
Yeah.
Or like, my friend started and she referred it to her friend and they loved it.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, where's the 6 months of like humiliation where I was standing at a restaurant going, this is my favorite restaurant. I can never come back here again.
Every business starts with the hustle. And we're lucky that we've got a little bit of a platform and a little bit of experience in other areas. But even now, launching new brands and categories in the spirits industry, we're going door to door.
Yeah. No, but you have to.
And it's honestly, it's not what I envisaged in my mid-50s doing. But we're passionate about the business and we're doing it.
Yeah.
And you do get those people, you're like, he's not coming back. That's for sure.
For sure.
And
I do think like at some point you'll realize the people who do say yes, they truly believe, sure, maybe they're saying yes on a whim, but I will say that quite a few of the brands that said yes, the first 20 are still in the app today. Like, I really do think that if they understand the product or you've shown demonstration, right? We did this thing where it was a free trial. You could do 2 weeks, no commission, no sign up fee. So you could actually test the app and see if it worked for you. If it brought in new customers, if it brought in, new sales, and they actually liked it. And so it does, like, I'm whining about it now, but it actually does like help to give something back in return or like say, we'll make a case study for you. We'll do like, free marketing for you and things like that. But, it's not all like, you do have to do the ugly stuff too. Yeah.
Where does your energy and motivation come from to keep going?
I think it's really just like sustainability is a big thing for me. I'm sure it's the same for you. I grew up doing competitive snowboarding. Don't know if you know that.
I heard that. I did hear that. I heard that. I did. I heard that.
Because I grew up in Switzerland and I really loved it. And the height really helps. So it did really well. And I moved to Hong Kong because the job offer was so much better. And so I moved to Hong Kong. I wanted to be closer to my family anyway because I didn't speak any Cantonese and my family's from Hong Kong. And when I moved here, there was protests. It was 2019. We had COVID, which was 3 years later. By the time I went back to Switzerland, the first thing I did was tell my parents, I'm going to go snowboarding. This is the only thing I want to do. I haven't seen snow in 4 years. Like, I just need to go back. And we went to my childhood mountain where I had learned how to snowboard and how to ski, and it was closed. So that's so weird. It's like the middle of the season. And turns out there's no snow that could reach it because it was global warming. And they had closed down for good because no snow could reach that low anymore. And I thought, oh my God, this is like where I wanted to like teach my kids how to snowboard. This is like, it was 30 minutes from our house. Like, it was supposed to be this like big piece of land that was supposed to be covered in snow the whole time. Yeah, so then I thought I have to do something.
Wow, that'll make an impact. That'll make an impact. As a young woman starting off business in Hong Kong and trying to find traction and solutions to the problems that you inevitably face when you're starting anything, whether it's raising funds, securing partners, what were the hurdles you had to overcome?
They were so horrible. They were, I don't know if anyone else has faced these, but it was definitely, I mean, investments are going to be hard to get anyway for any business, right? Like the pitching is really difficult as well in Hong Kong. We ended up doing a lot of like awards pitching, competition pitching. Signing up restaurants, as you just heard, was also humiliating, but it was fine in the long run. I think the worst was this massive discrimination. Not that I'm trying to pull on like heartstrings or anything, but we had like F&B is a really traditional industry, and you have some guys who've been in there for like 20, 30 years. I'm sure you know that are just really old school and like things are done this way and that's how it should be. And, old chefs and like old managers that just are so set in their ways. And, if you come in as like a girl, and I was 22, 23 when I started Chomp. So when I was walking into restaurants, I was 22, 23, and I had like a really big baby face. So it just didn't help at all. And, I had one meeting with a guy who I had known. We had a really great mutual friend together. And he had just opened a restaurant, and I thought, this is perfect. This will be the easiest win. We've already been around for about a year and a half. We've got, traction. We've got case studies. We had just won a couple of awards. Like, this is it. This is the perfect sell. And I went in and I had this meeting and I was like, hey, how are you? Like, long time no see. I saw you at the school reunion. Like, how are things? I was like, yeah, good. And I was like, look, I'm here to talk to you about Chomp. And he's like, no, I know. I've been following. It's been really great. Like, congrats. And I was like, yeah, great. Like, this is going to be the easiest sell ever. And then I was like, so like, when can we get you on? Like, I know you've got like loads of takeaway food. Like, you would be perfect for the app. And he's like, yeah, like I have a few concerns. And I was like, no problem. We do this commission-free thing. And he goes, actually, my concerns are with you. And I was like, me?
Wow.
And my co-founder was with me at the time, and he was like, with her? What is it? And I was so confused. I thought it was like I thought I had misheard something. And he goes, yeah, like you graduated a couple years after me, so you must be what, 23, 24? And I was like, yeah, ish. And he was like, surely you're gonna get pregnant soon and maybe you'll give up Chomp. And I was like,
wow.
and I honestly I had no idea what to say. I think I sat there like not understanding what he had just said. And I must have I blanked out. I was like, there's no way he just said
how do you
that.
answer that?
And my co-founder had
Wow.
to step in and finish the conversation, but I had no idea what had just happened. I was like, no, what? And he just kept going. It was just like, aren't you in a relationship? Like, wouldn't you start thinking about having kids soon? And I was like, no. I also, what does it matter? Like, anyway, wasn't the time to rant or anything, but it was one of those moments where I walked home and was like, am I supposed to be doing this? Like, should I be going home and working on a different job? Like, maybe he's right. Like, and saying all these things. But I wish that was the only time. There were so many. There were so many moments where I had meetings with investors where they're like, we're really interested in investing, but we're concerned about, I was like, oh, not this again.
Wow.
And it would be things like, we're concerned about your age. We're concerned about, you're quite public with your boyfriend. Like, maybe you're going to settle down soon. And we're like, there are so many founders who are married and have kids. Like, surely that's more of the concern. And it would be moments like this where I'm like, this is the real concern. Like, it's not, can you hit these milestones in the next couple of years? Or have you managed to sign this big name? It's been really difficult. It's like, none of that. It was like, we're concerned about you as a founder. And then there was all these articles that they were referencing. It was so weird. They would be referencing things like, when you invest in a company, you're investing in the founder. And I was like, yeah, but you know me. This is
They were referencing that.
Yeah, and I was like, this is our 6th meeting. Like, how much do you not know about me? And so it was all these really odd moments where I just thought, this is so hopeless.
Wow.
And then what's crazy is the guy who said, "Are you going to be pregnant soon?" ended up signing with us like 2 months later.
I'm surprised you let him.
And I was like, no, he went through somebody else, because I was like, I'm not talking to him anymore. But there was another vendor who was an Italian guy. I won't mention his name either, but there was an Italian guy who had opened and closed multiple restaurants. So I already knew like he was not going to last long. And he had made all these really weird ads on Instagram, but we thought it was an easy sell because he kept messaging us and we're like, whatever. He's probably going to open another place, then close it, then open another one. So at least there'll be a consistent business for us, I guess. And so it was my, one of my sales girls, it was her first week on the job. And I was like, you can come with me to the meeting. I'll teach you how to do it. Right. And so we're sitting there for an hour and a half. The guy is frantic, like running around everywhere, trying to run his operations and totally misplaced where we were in time. And then I went, okay, we're just going to head off. We'll reschedule, like, cause it's been so long, like already the first 15 minutes were weird. Like, we're just going to reschedule. And then he was like, no, like I'll come by. And then he comes over and he starts talking about our outfits. And I'm wearing a blouse, like a white blouse. She's wearing a tank top. It was boiling hot. She's wearing a tank top with like a spaghetti strap, which wasn't very dress code, but whatever. It was super hot. So I didn't say anything. She was wearing jeans, like very normal outfit. Every outfit's normal. But anyway, So he comes around and he's like, okay, we can start the meeting. But, I'm not understanding these outfits. As an Italian, like fashion's really important to us. And I was like, oh, I'm also Italian. Like, I really don't think the outfit's the issue here. Like, we've been waiting an hour and a half. We're just here to sign the contract. You've already said yes. We've already set up the store for you. You just need to sign the contract because you told us you didn't have a scanner. So we're here to sign the contract. And then he starts playing with her spaghetti straps. And he starts going over and starts playing with her spaghetti straps, like her straps on her. And it's got like, she's got her bra on and she's got the strap. And I'm like, oh, no. Like, you shouldn't be touching her. And he's like, I'm just saying, like, if you're going to wear an outfit. And I was like, I don't know where this is going. We're leaving. Forget the store. We're leaving. And we had to go out. And he was like talking to us through the door. He's like, no, please. Like, I want to show you this cake. Like, I want to show you this beer. And I was like, we're leaving. And then just as we walked out, we were talking about this on the way home. We were like, surely no other person has to go through this. Like, this must have just happened because we just look the way we look. Like, we just look like two girls who just walked into a store. And she was young. She was like in her 20s. And yeah, it was just like, why can't, like, I'm sure my old co-founder didn't have to do this. He was like in his 30s. Like, he didn't have to do this. Anyway.
Wow.
It was just so odd.
You know what? I would normally save this for the end, but I just want to say how proud I am of what you've done. Because I mean, you were here when you announced Chomp. I don't know if that was the first time you announced it,
that was
2021.
The first one, yeah.
And you announced it in this space.
Yeah. Right here in this room.
And it's only been the last sort of month or so that we've been sort of catching up and really talking about your journey and stuff. Yeah. And that's amazing that you're sitting here talking about this now.
I'm not the only one though. There's so many other girls that have gone through that. And I don't know if it's a Hong Kong thing or like, I don't know what it is, but I'm not the only one. Like, it's happened to many other people.
But it's amazing that you're sitting here now with what you've accomplished, having and had to go through all of that. Can I ask you a question? Did you have mentorship along the way here? Did you have anyone you could speak to about stuff like that?
Not the first year when we first launched. So we launched in August. We did 6 months of soft launch until November. So I would say not until probably the year after was when we had a couple of people approach us in coaching, who are experts in coaching, experts in mentorship and stuff. And, we had experts in marketing. So we had a few people along the way who have helped in many, many ways. But I think it's what you get back, right? Like, it's, I don't think I was that open at the time. I only gave them a really filtered version of what Chomp was, or like the problems that we were having, because in my head, we had a to-do list of problems, right? And I'm sure every business has the same, where you just have 101 things to deal with. And then you don't want to dump 101 things on this mentor. Yeah. You just want to give them the one and be like, can you help me solve this one problem? And then it will be a huge weight off my shoulder. So I think we had maybe 4 or 5 mentors over the course of 3 years. Each one made huge changes in what we're doing now. but that's 5 less problems than the 101
Yeah.
problems. But it was a huge help. Like we changed our marketing, we changed a lot of the, we started using Notion, which is a tool that everyone should use, and I'm very behind on it. But but I used it in a very regular template kind of way, and we had someone come in and was like, actually, you can automate this to like link up to this, and like when you start this, it will input like a custom template that you should actually have. And I was like, I had no idea you could do this, and so she helped a lot with procedures and automation and stuff, so that helped. But yeah.
Those things seem to come along at the right time as well sometimes.
They do, yeah, because sometimes you don't know you need it, and then it comes at the right time, or sometimes you're so busy you're like, now's not a good time, but please check back,
So what is the let's go to some good stuff. What's the impact purely from the app business look like since you launched?
So we have several initiatives outside of Chomp, right? Outside of the Chomp app, they're still under Chomp. We have things like the Rescued Feast, which is happening tomorrow. It's a quarterly dinner where we save food scraps and then we challenge celebrity chefs to make a dinner. We're in our 4th edition, so it's happened quite a few times. We also do it as a corporate catering offering. We do a lot of educational workshops. With international schools and stuff. So in total, and those workshops, they include food waste that they have to like upcycle in some way. So in total, we've saved just over 100,000 kilos of food. Most of it was from the app, but to date, I think this was last November, was about 100,000 kilos. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So it's been really great. And, like I said, it's something like 1 order is about 1 kilo saved, but we also do all these other initiatives that just skyrocket the number, which really, really helps. But yeah.
There's also, beyond just the food saving, you've got 800,000 people signed up on the app.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got a big community of people.
It's been good. Well. Yeah, we've been lucky.
Yeah. I think luck is you make your luck. What do the meetings with F&B partners look like today? Now that you're established?
Thank God they're different. Like, I think gone are the days where I'm sitting there like begging.
Yeah.
We've been really lucky. We have now referral vendors, vendors who've heard of us in some way or shape or form, and they come to us saying, we've heard of you. They'll email our website or they'll ask us for meetings. They'll get our numbers from neighboring vendors and they'll ask us to come in and pitch. What's great about these pitches is that most of the time, if they've got multiple locations, they'll bring in managers from multiple locations and we'll pitch to them. So it's changed into a lot more of like a financial reward. Like, here's how we can save you money. This is how much you can make from it. These are the successful case studies. This is the impact. So it's changed so much to the PDF. Like, here's what the app would look like.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's changed a lot. Yeah.
Do you have one pitch or do you change it depending on the person and the F&B partner you're targeting?
It depends on the F&B outlet.
Yeah.
If you've got a buffet, it's totally different.
Okay.
If you've got a coffee shop, it's totally different. Yeah.
Because I was wondering about sort of the motivation of partners. I'm sure there's some who are thinking sustainability, and then I'm sure there's others who are thinking I can monetize my waste.
Yeah. We do a little background check on the person that we're meeting to see where they're at.
Yeah.
It says a lot about LinkedIn posts and whatever you post. If you're talking a lot about like, financial benefits and your LinkedIn posts are linked towards more like cost-driven things, then it changes. If your LinkedIn posts or your Instagrams are more like tree hugging, leaning towards, you're our kind of people, and like it'll be an easier pitch.
Yep.
So we adjust. Leanne, who works with us, is really great at adjusting that pitch, but most of the time it's pretty general, and it's more targeted at what kind of outlet you had. So it's more focused.
Yeah.
I think if you present a solution to their exact problem, it's so much easier than if you present a solution to a general problem.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Like tweaking it based on your audience and trying to solve the problem that they think they have.
I think you have to attention span's a real thing. Like if you present 6 solutions and they've got maybe one problem, it's going to be way too much and overpowering.
Yeah.
We failed many ways by being like, oh, we do the Rescued Feast and we do workshops and we do this, and it's like gone nowhere.
We've been talking about the same thing, actually. It's like, let's just pitch one thing.
Yeah. It's sitting in our appendix.
Yeah.
But then if we know that you've got one restaurant, one buffet, we'll have one slide that says, this is what we can do for your restaurant. This is what we can do for your buffet. And this is how much we've saved from buffets in general. This is how much we've saved from restaurants in general with an operation of like 60 covers, things like that. So
Amazing.
it varies. Yeah.
So while Chomp is a for-profit business with investors that you have to answer to from time to time, at its core, it's a purpose business. And I think it's stayed true to its vision of saving food and operating sustainably. What challenges has that brought in terms of growing?
I'm sure you've got the same answer. It's difficult, right? Sustainability in Hong Kong is so difficult. I was saying to Charlotte earlier that sometimes you have to push, discounts first and say like, this is a discount app. As much as I hate to say it, like discounts are so important to Hong Kongers and like knowing that it's a really exciting platform because you can get food at a discount in a place that's ever so changing or so expensive for F&B. But, it depends who you're marketing to. And I think to push sustainability, we've really had to make it a second degree. I was saying earlier that like in our receipts, it's got like a little thing that says, thank you for saving the planet. Like it's really, really subtle. We'll push it on our social media, but it won't be so strong. Like even our colors are not green and blue, they're pink and red because they focus on like food and hunger, and they focus on like the food system itself versus, sustainability. You're doing something secondary, you're doing something great, but we've seen so many businesses die in Hong Kong because they push sustainability, and it's like their only thing, right? It's not like, oh, you can also have a community. Like, I'm sure you'll say the same, like Banyan's so great because you push community and events and network and all these different things and sustainability. But if you're going out there being sustainability number one, I've seen so many startups just die. Like
it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's sad. But I mean, you've had to stop yourself doing things like delivery.
Yeah.
I guess those are the sort of decisions that when you're staying true to your vision and true to your original motivations, make things more difficult.
I honestly can't say if it's helped or impacted. Okay. I can't, like, it's been 3 years. I get asked this every year. I cannot say if it's actually harmed or helped our business in any way. Like, unfortunately, there's no statistics because there's no alternate universe where we can compare data where we did do delivery. But we got approached by Food Panda in our first year. And they were interested in collaborating, and this was going to be a huge collaboration. We're like, oh my God, we've only been around like something like 10, 11 months. Like, this is so massive. They've noticed us, and they were like, we really want to partner with you. We want to extend our delivery platform to you. Right. So the concept was, and it's a great concept. The concept is, if you've ever used the Starbucks app or the McDonald's app, you can order and deliver food through that app, right? You don't need to go through Food Panda or Deliveroo, right? What happens in the back of that app is that the front face is Starbucks or Facebook, Starbucks or McDonald's, and then the back end is actually the Food Panda delivery. So it uses Food Panda drivers, and like the Food Panda drivers receive an order, but they don't know that you've used the Starbucks app or the McDonald's app. They just see the order. This is the way they pitched it to us. So they said, you can use the Chomp app, and then in the back, you're going to have this Food Panda delivery system. And we're like, okay, can you give us the metrics of carbon emissions for every rider? And they were like, oh, we don't have that data. I said, okay, can you find that data so then we can come back to you? And they did a ratio. They did something like a, circumference sort of metric, and they had like a pinpoint, like if you were based in Quarry Bay and you ordered something from like 100 meters away or a kilometer away. And we did the calculation. It was something like 1-to-1, where like if you ordered something from Chomp, you would save the exact same carbon emissions than if you had it delivered. So it would be like completely useless for trying to save food. You would just be making the same amount of carbon emissions, or if not more.
Yeah.
And we thought, no, this is probably not a good time. We should probably try and make more of an impact first. But, we do surveys all the time, like every quarter to our customers, and they say, we'd love delivery. So I can't say if it's actually harmed or not.
Just kudos for staying true to your, what you went in there with. You launched in 2021. In 2023, you received amazing recognition, selected in Forbes 30 Under 30. You've been featured in the South China Morning Post, Tatler. Earlier this year, on a flight to Vietnam, I saw you in Cathay Pacific's Discovery magazine. And then you were recently on the cover of Garfunkel, and it's wonderful and really, really well-deserved recognition for what you've achieved. And, I'm sure your parents, your friends, your family were full of pride and admiration. But I think, as everyone can see, I know it makes you slightly uncomfortable. And I've always appreciated and respected kind of the humility with which you receive that recognition. But I really wanted to ask you, how do you view recognition like this? And, how does it make you feel? But also, what does it mean for the business?
I think it's super uncomfortable.
Yeah.
We talked about this last week.
Yeah.
Like it's really odd. I can only say it's a great thing because we see the numbers on the back end. We know that there's a huge spike in app downloads. There's a huge spike in orders. Our website, sends us notifications being like, there's a huge, unusual spike in users or visitors. And you're like, oh, I know it's because of this. Like, you just know it's the same date. Like, you just know it's because this article came out. And, but it's so like awkward to put yourself out there, or like the Gafenku thing was so weird. Like we were saying that we thought it was a spam thing. And it's really awkward to like have to, I'm already awkward like talking about it because it's so uncomfortable to say. But it's awkward to like have to go back and someone's praising you and you just don't feel like you've done, like the delivery thing is a perfect question where it's like, I feel like I probably messed up and I don't know.
Yeah.
And someone's out here in front of you for like an hour telling you like, you're like praising you and you're there being like, I actually think I made a really great mistake. Like,
yeah. Like McDonald's is doing it. Starbucks is doing it.
And you're like, maybe I'm missing something
Chomp is
super
not,
key.
And
you're like, maybe, or like I turned down an investment once from a guy that I, was similar to the other story. Like I thought was super sexist and like didn't understand what we were doing, but had massive visions for like a China expansion, $30 rice box. This is rice, sorry. And I was like, that's just not what we're doing. And you just sit there going like, maybe I made a huge mistake. Like this investment would have been massive. And so when you're sitting there getting interviewed, you're like, this is so uncomfortable. Like, I actually don't think I should be here. Like, I think you picked the wrong person. I think I made loads of mistakes.
But you know what? I mean, when you look at where you've come from and where you are today, the recognition is deserved. And I there's two things I wanted to say on that. One thing, when you talk about investors who make you feel uncomfortable, one of the things that I've kind of framed in my head is that as a founder, one of the best things about owning your business is you don't have to work with assholes.
No, yeah, sure.
You can make that call every day.
Yeah.
And I love that part of it. But the other thing, and I didn't want to make you feel uncomfortable. I brought it up because we chatted about it. And when we were talking about it last week, I think for both of us, there's been a realization that the business needs it.
Yeah.
Because neither of us have huge marketing budgets, right? So this is your marketing.
This is it. Like, this is the story.
It, right? That's it. And when someone comes to you and says they want to feature you or they want to feature your business, it's like, you got to grab that.
Yeah. And and that's the worst part, is that it converts so well.
Yeah.
And you're like my team would shoot me if they knew that I turned this down. And they were like, we're killing ourselves, like trying to make new marketing strategies. And you could have just done one interview and it would have spiked. And you're like, ugh. So yeah, it's you just have to do it. Like, it just is a thing that you have to do. And I will mention that I am super grateful for all these opportunities. You have startups who are dying for features, and they're, sending cold emails to SEMP. And we're so lucky to have people who like would love to attend our dinners or would love to like, be part, and would be like, oh, we'd love to share our story. Like, I use this app with my daughter. I'm also a reporter. And you're like, oh, that's so nice. Like, we'd love to. And it's coming from a selfish point of view where I'm like, no, I shouldn't.
Yeah.
Because it's embarrassing. But actually, it's so many people want this opportunity, and I'm so shameful with it. But yeah, like you said, it's you're the only person who loves your business as much as you do, right?
Yeah.
No one else and this is what I heard from my mentor a while back. You're the only person who cares about your business, which sucks, right? It sucks because it's like, no, I want everyone to care about my business. But the reality is, like you said, you have a life, you have all these different things. And like, you're not going to spend all day listening about your own business or like someone else's business and stuff. So you have to be your own cheerleader, right? You have to go out there and like preach to the choir. You have to say why your business is so great. Even though some days you wake up and you're like, I hate this business. Like, why did I start this? Could have been in my marketing job. Like, could have got a paycheck and it would have been fine. Like,
or when the LinkedIn algorithm hates you.
Yeah, and you're like, as a marketing strategist, I didn't have to use LinkedIn. Like, I don't need this. And so you're sitting there like, or like you get a notification that Instagram has changed their Reels algorithm. And you're like, none of my friends have to deal with this. I'm sitting there trying to make new content.
It's so important though. It's so important. And it's taken us a while to sort of realize that the only people who are going to stand up and shout about us is us.
Yeah. Even if my parents were really supportive and I was really grateful until it became a reality, and then they were not supportive. They were supportive to the idea and they were like, this is a great idea. You should totally do it. And then as soon as I started working on it, they were like, you never have time for us. Like, you don't visit enough. I was like, I thought you liked it. And, and they're supposed to be your, unconditional cheerleaders.
Yeah.
They're not. And it's okay. And, you have to be your own. You have to put those silly reels out.
I have to say, my mum's the first person to like our Instagram posts.
So cute.
We just have to get her on LinkedIn now, commenting.
Push that algorithm. You need cheerleaders like that, to be honest. Yeah.
What's next for Chomp, Carla? What's your vision?
Possibly delivery? No. I don't know. A year ago, I would have been like, I just hope the app grows. And then we came up with the rescued feast. And I was like, oh, more work. Like, why did I do that? I hope in some ways that we expand to much more districts. We're only in 13 districts at the moment. We've been really struggling to push into like Yunlong, just because the turnover of restaurants there is really high. We've had 4 or 5 restaurants and then they just closed down. Then we have another 3 and then they close down. So we'd love to be secure in certain districts. Another thing is that I'm trying to build a B2B app. It's been really complicated because essentially I feel like I'm 22 years old starting over again and going through the whole app thing again. But essentially it's a concept where if you work in a bank or if you work at a school or if you go to school in a university with a canteen, you can use the Chomp app in a closed loop system. So you can use it only for your canteen instead of using it for any other restaurants, but you can use it only for your business or your school, your university canteen, things like that. And
interesting.
We've been asked to make it. It's been really difficult to build just because I haven't been able to put time into it. But I hope in the future I've managed to balance my time a little bit more and then I can actually focus on this bucket list project. But I think that's always the entrepreneur dilemma.
It is. Chasing shiny objects and
For
choosing which ones not to chase. Last question before we go over to audience Q&A. What are the good things about running a business in Hong Kong?
Yeah, that's a good last question.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everyone knows the whole freedom of your own schedule and things like that. I think it's
in Hong Kong specifically,
though. So I think in Hong Kong, what's great is I find that other entrepreneurs know exactly what you're going through. I think that's worldwide, but I think in Hong Kong, it's so much more community based. I feel like people really open doors for you. Like we haven't spoken properly for a while, but then when we do speak, we're like you're very much like, oh, we just actually like signed with this place. Like, I'll love to do an intro, and I do it right back where I'm like, we actually signed with this place. We'll do an intro, and it's like it's so normal. Like, and I've heard stories of startups in London or in Paris where they're like, oh, it's so cutthroat. Like, no one wants to send us any contact. So like, we can't even get 5 minutes with this person. Whereas in Hong Kong, it's like, yeah, I'll just CC you in an email. Like, we actually did a really great project with these guys. Like, they would love to hear from you.
Yeah.
And I think like we take it for granted, like how much we can ask for. I think it's worth asking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the entrepreneur community here is one thing that's come out of every single entrepreneur story where I've asked this question. I haven't asked it in all of them, but every time I've asked this question, I've had the same answer. It's like people are generous with their time. People want to help. People, there's just this entrepreneur community and no one pushes you away.
No.
Which is really, really nice to see.
I mean, I credit a lot of restaurants. It was definitely not me. Like, you should see me like pitching. It's definitely not me. I credit a lot to people like you, or people like people that we've met in the industry who go, "This is a great idea. Actually, my cousin works there," or like, "My friends just opened this restaurant. Like, you should totally, speak to them." Or actually, I used to work at like the Shangri-La. You should totally pitch to them, and I have a contact. Like, I think those things don't happen nearly as much
places,
in other places.
Amazing. Guys, we'll throw it open to Q&A. Wilson's got a microphone there, so if anyone does have a question, we'd love to get it on the mic so people can hear. One from the back.
I feel like I rambled there.
Thank you for the talk. That was really inspiring. How did you come up with the name Chomp?
Oh my God, you'll hate the story. Don't think I've told you this as well. So we're four friends. This is going to be the worst story. We're four friends, and we have a massive bottle of wine that was gifted by one of my clients. And this is COVID, and I've just told them that I want to come up with this idea, but I don't know what it looks like. I actually thought Chomp was going to be a book, first of all. It was going to be a journal for restaurants to write and log how much food they had left over, and people would come and look at the book and buy it. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea, but it went through its phases. You have to go through it. And then I said, I'm really struggling with the branding. And they're like, you can't do branding without a name. I was like, okay, I'm struggling with a name. And so we all, like I said, I really loved company names that had like a funny sound that didn't mean much, like Uber, which does have a meaning, right? It means a lot, but I just thought it was a funny sound. And so I asked all of them to write a bunch of things and put it in a hat. And so we all wrote, I'll take credit, I wrote Chomp, but we all wrote different things. It was so dumb. Like some of them were like oomph and like really weird names. And we were pulling it out of the hat. We got to like the fifth one before I was like, this is the right one. And it was, obviously I was biased and I was like, this is it. But Chomp is the sound you make when you eat something, right? And I really liked it. But our first couple months in Hong Kong, if you have a Cantonese accent, it sounds like Trump. And I totally shot myself in the foot with like the pronunciation. I was like, oh my God, like, why did I do this? It was about a year or two before I was like, it's actually Chomp. So it's not a great story, but yeah. Sometimes you just have to pull it out of a hat and you can't decide. You just have to let the guesswork do it. Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you for sharing. I think I'm curious to know where you find the energy to keep going every day. Like, what would you define as a win or a reward?
I think it's not so much one thing. I think someone once told me, I can't remember who, unfortunately, but someone once told me, if you're lying on your deathbed and you regret some things in your life, would this be one of it? And I don't think I could ever live with myself if I didn't give all my energy and it failed. Like if Chomp failed tomorrow, if it failed tomorrow and I didn't give all of my energy, I really half-assed it, I would sit there in my bed going, I could have done this, or I should have given more priorities, or I should have taken that meeting, or whatever it may be. And, I tried to go through every task going, maybe it was a waste of time, but at least I tried. And I think the biggest regret would be sitting there going, I can't believe I didn't try harder.
Thanks, Carla. Can I ask you, I think all of us gave a intake of breath with some of the stories you were talking about how you've been treated. Has there ever been a situation where you've really not wanted to work with a company, but you've decided that for the greater good, you kind of have to?
Yeah.
I mean, there must be a balancing game sometimes, whether it's because you think they're too financially driven and not motivated by sustainability, or whether it's just like unpleasant people to work with.
Yeah.
It must be tough.
Yeah, especially because when you're starting up, I wish I could be that person who's like, actually, it doesn't align with my values, I'm going to say no. But sometimes you're in a really tough financial position where you're like, I'll just say yes to this thing and hopefully it'll work out. Or I can always say no later on, right? We worked with a really big hotel brand that I thought was so amazing. We got 5 meetings with them, but actually 5 meetings is like over and over again. And by the 5th meeting, I had met what was at the time the F&B manager of this one outlet. And he just treated me like I was so small. I remember sitting there, like we didn't even make it to the outlet itself. We were in the lobby of the hotel. Like we didn't even, like he wouldn't even give me a seat. Like we were just standing there and I was pitching to him in the lobby of this hotel going, what the hell? Like we couldn't even have water. Like we were just standing there. And, I thought like, we don't need this. Like we don't need this at all. But at second thought, it's a huge hotel brand. It would be our first hotel. Like this would be such a big moment. And the guy was asking us all these stupid questions like, oh, I'm really concerned about, people coming in and ordering this food and like coming in their pajamas. And I went, what? What do you mean pajamas? And like, well, we can't guarantee who walks into the hotel. I said, who is walking around in pajamas? Like,
It's more likely to be a hotel guest coming down for
and I was
breakfast,
like, sure, you guys. And I was sitting there going like, no, you cannot be. And I literally said, you cannot be serious. There are who is walking around in pajamas? Like, point them out. And I went, there's like, you cannot, are we stopping here? Is the partnership stopping here because you're concerned about pajamas? And he was like, I just don't know what quality of app users you have on your app. And I was like, I can guarantee none of them are wearing pajamas or are wearing pajamas at home. And he was like, I'm not sure. And I went, okay. And then just as I walked out the door, like the lobby door, he WhatsApped me and said, we're interested in moving forward. And then I went, that was so weird. Like, do we move forward? Like I could have easily just been like, no, actually I'm good. But the first 4 meetings went so well with the assistant F&B manager that I went, can I just clarify who will be my contact person? Is it, this guy or is it you? And he goes, no, it'll be this guy, the assistant F&B manager. I was like, perfect. Like we'll sign today. But I think there was a good hour in that meeting where I was like, we don't need this, but then sometimes you go, but it would bring so much value. Like it's a big name. First hotel ever, like it would bring us loads of credibility. And it did eventually. It actually got us more hotels signed and it wouldn't have happened without us signing it. But I remember that meeting going like, what on earth? So yeah, sometimes I think if it really like fucks with your values, then for sure, I think definitely say no. Like those guys, like the investors, I would have never taken their money, like all those things. But this one was like a guy being really rude and then asking about pajamas. Then I was like, oh, fine. So yeah, I think it depends.
Just following on from that, do you think there's a link with the importance of educating people as well? When we're talking about you're not going to do delivery because of the impact that has. If you did do it, it would grow exponentially, I would assume.
Yeah.
And more people would learn about Chomp, more people would be aware of the food waste issue. Is that something that you have balanced as well?
I mean, that's why I also still say I would consider it, but I just haven't. I think it's more my values where I just haven't come to grips with the idea that I could do it. Yeah. We've had team members be like, we'll just do it and then we'll go plant a couple of trees and offset that carbon emission. I'm like, it's not quite, we're not quite there. So, I think there will be many more decisions down the line where I'll end up with the same, like, I don't know if shouldn't I? And, maybe further down the line on my deathbed, I'll be like, I should have done delivery. Here we are. Yeah.
Huge respect for that. Thank
you. Could be a huge mistake, to be honest.
Thank you so much, first of all, Carla, for your honesty and integrity. And I was hanging on to every word that you were saying. So huge respect for everything that you've achieved. I have a question, and this is something that I'm personally struggling with right now. When we are running our own business or startup or something that we are so passionate about, I've struggled with drawing the line that, okay, this is it. Like, this is enough for this day, for this week, for this month, for this season of life. And there's always this next thing. There's always the next shiny object. There's always the next LinkedIn post, the next podcast, the next book to read, the next client to pitch. And I struggle a lot by saying, good job, Nidhi. You've done enough for today and you can go to bed with peace. Because even when I'm going to bed after tucking my kids to bed, I'm like still thinking, these are all the things. And I've learned that. I'm been practicing this over the last 14 years now, but it's so hard for me to say, atta girl, you did it. And just this morning, I was going to a meeting. I was in the Uber taxi and I was thinking myself this exact same question. If I die tomorrow, would I say tomorrow that I did enough? And I was like, maybe I'll have to say that, but I don't know. So I'm curious to hear, like, how do you address that in your own life?
I think I've only had one really bad burnout since I started Chomp, and it was bad enough that I promised myself to not do that again. and it made me learn how to set boundaries. But boundaries, for me, it focused a lot on like too many meetings or saying yes to too many things, over promising commitments and things like that. And the only thing I can say for me personally is that I realized that there is always going to be something else. There will always be another podcast, another book. There will always be another event that you can't make because there's so many events and things like that. And I think in your heart, you need to be okay with what you've done for that day and be like, I started a couple years ago, actually, I started doing a to-do list and then right next to it, a done list. And it would be things that I had done. And you would have to include things like, not on your to-do list, like things like meetings, things that like ideas, things that you've actually like felt like were done, where you're like, actually, I achieved this and done this. And you realize that slowly, the done list becomes really big. And I realized through conversations with friends that the done list was so large that because my brain was working on overdrive, I was like, I got to do this and a million things. And what if we do this? And I had this meeting. And then you look at it and you go, actually, that's plenty. Like, and you need to look at it in a realistic point of view and be like, actually, that's loads. Like, if anything, you should take a break and relax and, spend time with kids and things like that. And, we've talked about the mental health balance and like spending time for yourself and going to the gym and exercising. And I don't do that nearly enough, but it's starting to become a thing where you need to start looking at your to-do list and all the things you want to achieve and know that that list can go on forever and it can be done tomorrow. But the done list is things that you've done today that you're so happy that you did. Some days it might be 3 things, but there were huge things that you're like, whoa, I'm glad that's off the list. And you can go on the next day knowing that you've done all these things. But, you can't, let's say, die tomorrow and be like, oh, thank God I like built an app in one day. Like, you got to be realistic and say, I'm glad I did this. It was a lot. It was a big task and it took up a lot of brain power to do. And sometimes you don't give enough credit where you're saying, I had to think of this one new idea, but it took up 90% of my brain power. I was exhausted afterwards. And that was a big thing. Sometimes you look at it and you're like, oh, it's just one line. But actually it's a big thing and you should give yourself credit that it was a lot and you can go to bed knowing that you've done this big thing and tomorrow you can start fresh. But I'm in the same boat. I think it's difficult, but yeah.
Thank you.
I love the done list idea. I think it's, I think for mental sanity, when we all have so much going on, having that done list really helps.
It's so handy
to put things in perspective and just sit back and say, actually, I did a lot, even though I've got all this other stuff to do, because you sit here and your done list right now is 80,000 downloads, 250 plus partners, and you can sit and celebrate that and still look forward and say, I've still got all these other things we need to do.
But you can look
and
back
you can do
and
that
say,
every day as well. You don't have to do it every 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. I mean, your done list could be like, I went out for lunch.
Yeah.
Like I took an hour for myself and went out and got lunch. Like that could be a huge thing in your done list where it's like,
or I went for a run.
Yeah. Oh, that's a big one. The last meeting I had with him, or 2 meetings ago, I was like, we can meet, but I have to squeeze in a run afterwards. And I showed up in running gear and I was like, I'm really sorry. I need to do this run.
It's all good. We had CrossFit cocktails.
But sometimes you just have to put that in and be like, done.
Yep.
I've done it. Yeah.
All right. Carla, thank you.
Thank you.
I think there's so much to take from what you said. And, I actually am looking forward to going back and listening to it over again because sometimes I miss things because I'm kind of want to keep the discussion. I'm looking at the next question. But I just feel like some of the things that you shared today are so valuable. was so open and transparent, and it really means a lot that you came here and shared that with us.
No, of course.
Thank you.
Thank
you
you.
everyone for being here. Wilson, thank you
Thank
again
you.
for producing. And yeah, we'll go grab some snacks.
Yes.
Yeah, we've got some Chomp snacks actually.
Very
we
big
picked up.
surprise.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.